victog.com.
Good morning. Today we are going to study about market failure. So there are four major reasons that leads to market failure. They are market power, externalities, public good, and incomplete information. So what do you mean by market failure? We actually assume that the markets are very efficient in allocating resources in an optimal manner, but in reality what happens is markets fail to allocate resources efficiently, and therefore it leads to an inefficient outcome in the market. So market failure is a situation in which free market leads to misallocation of resources, which will lead to either overproduction or underproduction in the market, and this will ultimately lead to less than our optimal outcome. So market failures are situations in which in a particular market left to itself is inefficient in nature. So market failures can be divided into two types: demand side market failure and supply side market failure. Demand side market failure is related to the consumers and consumption, and supply side market failures is related to the producers and the production. Why do market fail? There are four major reasons that leads to market failure. They are market power, externalities, public goods, and incomplete information. So what do you mean by market power? We all know that there exists a lot of varieties of market in the economy, like perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, duopoly, etc. In each of the market, the power center of the market or the power centers differs. Like who is in every market, the market power will be different. So take the example of monopoly power. In a monopoly market, there will be only one producer in the economy, and he is known as the price maker of such markets because he controls the production of a particular commodity. So he can actually fix the price of that particular commodity. In such cases, what will a producer do? In a monopoly market, the producers will always be producing at a less than equilibrium output, so as to keep the price in a higher note, because they will always supply lesser than the demand for that particular product. So when demand is greater than supply, this will always lead to an increase in the price, and finally it will enhance the profits of the monopoly producer. So such markets actually leads to a less than efficient outcome, or here the welfare of the consumers actually go down. This is known as market failure. Market power can cause markets to be inefficient. It keeps price higher and output lower than the outcome of equilibrium of supply and demand. In extreme cases, there is the problem of non-existence of market, like in cases of pure public goods. And the second reason for market failure is externalities. In layman time, by externality we mean anything that one individual does may have some effect on the others. For example, take the example of an individual who is used to consume ordinary vegetables till now, and he has shifted his consumption from ordinary vegetables to organic vegetables. So this will lead to an increase in the price of the organic vegetables in the market, and it will also result in reducing the welfare of the consumers who were already consuming organic vegetables. So this happens through a price mechanism, or through changes in prices. Thus, with the help of the price system, the producers and the consumers are well aware of the the efficiency of the market, or through market prices. Sometimes what happens is the actions of either consumers or producers results in cost and benefits which will not be projected in the prices of that particular product. Such cost or benefit is known as externalities. So such cost or benefits which are not accounted by the market price are called externalities, because they are external to the market. They are not projected in the market prices of that particular commodity. There is an externality when a consumption or production activity has an indirect effect on others' consumption or production activity, and such effects are not reflected in the market prices of that commodity. Since it occurs outside the price mechanism, these things are not compensated. And externalities can also be known as spillover effects, neighborhood effect, third party effect, and side effect. Externalities can be in two types. It can either be unidirectional or reciprocal. What do you mean by unidirectional externality? Take the example of an accountant who is disturbed by a loud music played by a singer. So in this case, the only one who is facing an externality is the accountant, and the singer is not facing any externality because of the accountant doing his job. This is known as unidirectional externality, or the externality happens in only one direction. That is known as unidirectional externality. And what do you mean by reciprocal externality? Take suppose a workshop creates a louder noise which imposes an externality on a baker who is producing cakes in a nearby bakery, and which actually emits a lot of smoke that causes externality to the workers who is working in the workshops. In this case, both of the parties are facing externalities, and such externalities are known as reciprocal externalities. Then again, externality can be positive and negative in nature. Negative externality occurs when the action of one party causes an effect on the other party, and positive externality occurs when the action of one party causes a benefit on the another party. So there are four possible types of externalities. They are negative production externality, positive production externality, negative consumption externality, and positive consumption externality. Negative production externality. A negative externality is initiated in production which imposes an external cost on others, may be received by another in consumption or in production. For example, take the case of a firm who is producing aluminium. So what the firm does is they discharge the untreated waste into water nearby. So what happens is the river gets polluted, and water causing health hazards for people who use the water for drinking and bathing, and this will also affect the fish output, as it will lead to a less catch for fishermen due to loss of fish resources. So the first one, that is the wastewater, leads to health hazards for health hazards for people who are consuming it for drinking and bathing, is known as negative production externality received in consumption. And the second one, the pollution of river that affects the output of fish, is known as negative production externality received in production. The aluminium firm actually has no incentive to account the external cost that it imposes on consumers of river water or fishermen when making its production decision. These externalities caused by the production of aluminium is not projected in the market prices of aluminium. This is known as negative production externality. So the next one is positive production externality. What do you mean by positive production externality? It actually confers an external benefit, positive benefit on others. So take the example, which is actually very rare in nature. For example, if a firm offers training to its employees for improving their skills, after a particular period of time, if these people are looking for another job, the firms who are going to actually hire these people will be benefiting by the already possessed skill by the employees. So this is one kind of a positive production externality. A positive production externality is received in consumption When an individual raises an attractive garden, actually the one who is passing by actually gets pleasure out of watching the flowers in the garden. So these costs are externalities in nature. So these costs are not included while they are actually making the decisions. This is known as positive production externality. And the third one is negative consumption externality. What do you mean by negative consumption externality? Okay, these externalities are initiated in consumption. Say for example, person who is smoking cigarettes in public places. This actually causes passive smoking by others and creates litter and diminishing the aesthetic value of a place. And another example is playing the radio loudly, obstructing one from enjoying a concert. So all these leads to negative consumption externalities. The consumption of a particular good actually has an externality on others. So now another example is the act of an indisciplined student talking and creating disturbance in class, preventing the teachers from making effective instruction, and the case of excessive consumption of alcohol that leads to the efficiency of a worker, which actually leads to a lesser production productivity of that worker. All these are examples of negative consumption externality. So negative consumption externality lead to a cost on another person by the consumption of a particular commodity. So the fourth type of externality is positive consumption externalities. Positive consumption externality will have a positive impact on others. Say for example, if you are taking immunization for a contagious disease, this will actually lead to a social benefit to others, as well as by preventing others from getting infected. And then if you are going to the health club by the employees of a firm, this would actually result in increasing the productivity of the worker. All these are positive consumption externality. The consumption of a particular good leads to others benefiting out of you consuming it. So externalities can be divided into four major kinds. They are negative production externality, positive production externality, negative consumption externality, and positive consumption externality. So now what we need to look into is how does externalities cause inefficiency and market failure. Here we have to look at two important terms related to cost. They are the private cost and social cost. Private cost is the cost faced by the producer or consumer directly involved in transaction. So these cost includes labor cost and energy cost, etc., etc. On the other hand, social cost refers to the total cost to the society on account of a particular production process or consumption activity. So social costs are private cost borne by the individuals directly involved in transaction, together with external costs borne by third parties who are not directly involved in the transaction. So social cost includes private cost plus external cost. Thus, the presence of externalities create a divergence between private cost and social cost of production. When a negative production externality exists, the social cost will always be greater than the private cost. Externalities cause market inefficiencies because they hinder the ability of market prices to convey accurate information about how much to produce and how much to consume. So efficiency occurs when only when all benefits and costs are actually paid for. Negative externality imposes cost on a society that extend beyond the cost of production as originally intended by the producer. We have already talked about the aluminium producing firm. The prices of the market prices of the aluminium will not actually display or project the external cost caused by polluting the water. So there is a negative externality in that case. To control these things, what we actually need is government intervention, because the market cannot actually correct these kind of externalities by its own. Without government intervention, such a producer will have no reason to consider the social cost of pollution. Such negative externalities actually leads to excess production and unnecessary social cost. This happens mainly because the society does not know who is actually creating externality in the market, or who are the harmful producers in the market. Even if the society knows it, the cause effect linkage are so unclear that the negative externality cannot be questionably traced to its producers. So that is where we actually need the government to intervene, so that the government can actually take steps which will be able to control the externalities by negative externality caused by the producers. Negative externalities and laws of social welfare. So take this graph, like if there is a free market system that is operating in the market, they will be producing at Q1 level of output. Okay, output is measured along the horizontal axis and cost of benefits is measured along the vertical axis. Marginal private benefit is the benefit that you actually gain from producing a particular good, and marginal private cost is the cost of production. And marginal social cost is the cost of private cost plus external cost. So if there exists a free market system in the economy will be producing at a point where they will be producing Q1 level of output at a rate of P1. Here they are not taking into account the social cost, or marginal social cost is the addition to total cost by producing one more unit of a commodity. Anything that is marginal is an additional cost that you will have to incur for producing one more unit of a commodity. So here we actually assume that there is no marginal social cost in the economy, but in actual case what happens is P1 level of price and Q1 level of quantity, the marginal social cost is this much. So Q1 E is the marginal private cost and Q1 ES is the marginal social cost. So marginal social cost is greater than the marginal private cost. So at this level there is an overproduction and a social cost or external cost that is happening in the market, and this Q1 level of output is not an optimal output. So what happens is, to produce at an optimal output, production has to be reduced to Q2 level of output, where they will be charging P2, where the cost of benefit is equal to marginal social cost, and E1 is the equilibrium output in the economy. So the shaded triangle area is the dead weight lost in the, or welfare lost in the economy as such. While talking about externalities causing inefficiency and market failure, we have to look into two costs, that is private cost and social cost. Private cost includes only production cost faced by the producers, and social cost includes external cost in addition to private cost, and so social cost is private cost plus external cost. And the negative externalities actually leads to excess production and unnecessary social cost. There is where we actually need government intervention in the market so as to control externality or external cost. Negative externality and laws of welfare. So if the market is free, if the market is operating in a free market economy, so these people will be producing at Q1 level of output at P1 level of price. So the marginal private cost will be Q1E, whereas while taking marginal social cost into account, the marginal social cost is greater than that of the marginal private cost So there exists an overproduction in the economy. So in order to produce at an equilibrium or most efficient level, they have to actually reduce the quantity to Q2 level, and they have to produce at Q2 E1 level of marginal social cost. That is where the marginal private benefit is equal to marginal, or marginal private cost is equal to marginal social.
We are getting.
Next monsoon season is East Asian monsoon season.
It actually contributes to the well-being of the society.
What do you mean by the word physiography? Physiography means how the first. What is the definition of classification? Say classification is simply DNA means deoxyribonucleic acids and RNA is ribonucleic. After the evaporation, the parcel of air, the parcel of moisture that becomes
വർത്തമാനകാല
ക്രിയയെ എടുക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി ആ ലകാരത്തിലുള്ള